Welcome to episode 200 of the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Brightman. First, wanted to start and just thank everyone who has listened and watched over the past 15 or so months since I launched the Scarlet Faithful. Really appreciate everyone's support. And, it's really picked up podcast wise since I started doing daily podcasts in May. Obviously, I miss a day here and there. And wanted to get this out on Halloween night, but just got to be a bit too much. And doing it fresh here on Wednesday, November 1st, just 5 days away from the Rutgers men's basketball season starting. So I wanted to cover the Rutgers-Princeton game, why it means a lot to myself. I know it means a lot to a lot of fans. And also wanted to announce, which I did on Twitter on Tuesday, but wanted to announce here as well. I have 2 tickets the Scarlet Faithful is giving away for Monday's game at Cure Arena in Trenton, section 105, row D. They're good seats. All you need to do to enter is either to follow me on X/Twitter or subscribe to this channel on YouTube. I don't ever ask anyone to subscribe, but got to build the brand. And it would be awesome if you did that. And I'm going to announce the winner on Friday's episode. So I'll be basically pulling names from my followers and my subscribers, and I'll put them into a hat and I'll pick one out. So I will be at the game covering the game. So it will be just awesome to give away 2 good tickets to a diehard Rutgers fan, and looking forward to doing that. But just in terms of Rutgers-Princeton, obviously, it's a huge game for both programs. But for me, it really does go back to my childhood. I grew up in West Windsor, which is right next to Princeton. My father worked at Rutgers. So back in the mid-'80s through basically 2000, when I graduated at Rutgers, I went to basically every game. I went to a ton of games at Jadwin in general, just because I was nearby. That was obviously the height of the Pete Carrill era at Princeton. And there were a lot of great games in this series over the years between the 2 schools. Rutgers never won at Jadwin, basically, when Carrill was there. He lost twice ever to Rutgers. I was at the last time that Rutgers beat Princeton. They held them to 41 points. That was 1991, December. Rutgers won at Jadwin in the early 70s. A lot of longtime fans, of course. The most famous game in the history of the series is the 1976 NCAA tournament, when Princeton almost knocked off the undefeated Scarlet Knights. They survived. They missed a free throw late. Rutgers won by 1 and ultimately got to the Final Four, as we all know. I wasn't around for that, obviously, but there's been a lot of great games. But that 91 game was also in particular very interesting in terms of Rutgers history. That was a tremendous season in terms of just intrigue and some of the notable wins that Rutgers had. They beat Princeton in the second game. I was at that third game as well at the RAC. They beat UNLV, who was ranked at the time. They were coming off that Final Four loss to Duke and the national championship the year before. The roster was completely depleted, but that roster went 26-2 or 28-2. They only lost twice all year. They were on probation. They couldn't go postseason. Jerry Tartanian was still there. The RAC was rocking. It was certainly an underrated game in terms of all-time RAC games for Rutgers. And they won something like 92 to 87, I think. So I remember that. They also beat Maryland that year. And then they had like a 6-game losing streak in the A10. They finished just above 500. They went to the NIT. But, that was kind of a season back then that I think Rutgers fans should appreciate now, right? Because Rutgers had a lot of years where they had ups and downs, and making the NIT was really kind of the ceiling, where they always tended to fall short in the NCAA tournament. And I'm hopeful that this year we'll see Rutgers go back to the NCAA tournament and have plenty more preview coverage throughout the week. But just getting back to Princeton, as a kid, like I just have very strong memories of walking into Jadwin Gym, and it felt like the Rose Bowl at that time when you're a kid, and like how big it is. And it's a really amazing viewing experience for a basketball game. And I really hope that this Monday's game starts a renewal of the home and home series between Rutgers and Princeton. Obviously, this is on a neutral court. Credit to Steve Peichel and to Mitch Henderson for getting this going. And hopefully it's the start of something that's on an annual basis, because it's great for the state. And both fan bases, I think, if not all of those fan bases, right? And I get if you're younger and never experienced it and, don't really get it or doesn't really matter. I understand that. But, before Rutgers joined the Big East, I mean, their rival was Princeton. It wasn't Seton Hall. And I'm all for having both rivalry games every year. I mean, it would be awesome. And, it's a clear way to say, hey, if you beat both those programs, obviously how you finish for the season matters. But you beat both those teams, you have some bragging rights for sure. And it's just two great non-conference opponents to have, get you ready in different ways and for Big Ten play. So, yeah, there's been a lot of great games in the series. When Kirill finally left, Rutgers started to get the upper hand. They won 9 of 11, I believe, until the very end when Mitch Henderson got there in 2011. But, even with the end of the Bannon era, Gary Waters, who did have a good run, Fred Hill era, which was not a good run, and the start of the Mike Rice era, Rutgers dominated. Princeton struggled. John Thompson Jr. They had Joe Scott, and then they also had Sidney Johnson. And they were not, at the same level. But Mitch Henderson has obviously restored them coming off the Sweet 16 this past year. So there's a lot of intrigue going into this one. But I know there's a lot of fans that have been around longer than me that care even more about this game. But for me, it's personal in the sense of, it's some of my favorite childhood memories. And the timing of it, typically in December. Sometimes it was in January. Back then, it just was part of the winter, part of holiday season, part of basketball, and it was always a very spirited game. Whether Rutgers was any good, Princeton was mostly good. I mean back then, I mean they went to the NCAA tournament almost every year. In '96, which was Kirill's last team, they beat UCLA, the defending national champions. Mitch Henderson was the point guard then. Rutgers didn't actually play them that year because of the Big East. There was some kind of scheduling conflict, I forget. But every win over Princeton was, it was a big one. And there wasn't, there was RPI back then. There wasn't the net and all that. And I know that plays into it. I know that's an argument for some people as to why they shouldn't play. But I don't think it makes sense. And, Princeton's in the low 100s right now. Ken Palm wise, we'll see if they're, Q3 or whatever, but it is on a neutral court. So that helps. But no matter what their ranking is, I mean, it's always going to be a very competitive, tough game. They obviously play a different style now. They shoot, they've always shot a lot of threes, but they're more fast paced. They're more athletic. Well, they were last year with Tosin. They lost Lomborg to Northwestern, who's going to be really good for the Wildcats. So I'm not looking forward to playing him, but they have Caden Pierce, who was all freshman for Princeton last year. He's going to be really good. So, yeah, I'm excited for the environment on Monday. I think it's going to be awesome. And for those that have been to these games in the past, it means something, and I think that, it's disappointing that it's taken this long, but it's awesome that, Henderson and Peichel have done this. And I hope that it's the start of something long-term. And, just going back to those, I mean, Princeton at times, like when Rutgers played them, like Princeton was they were the superpower, in terms of just the national relevance and their ability to go to the postseason year after year. And obviously they played a very difficult style. It's almost like playing the option in football, the triple option. No one played like Princeton. A lot of teams have copied and stolen from it nowadays with the Pete Carell's offense. But it was a very difficult offense to defend with all the backdoor cuts and it was always a fun game to watch. And Princeton's dominated the series over the years, 75-45. Like I said, Carell never lost to Jadwin basically against Rutgers. And but Rutgers dominated as they were in the Big East. So I don't think it's going to be fun. It's just going to be fun to see these two teams going up and down the court. I think it's a great test for both. I think that it's awesome, too, for the players, just in terms of the history of these programs, knowing that it means something to the fan bases, knowing that it means something to the state. It's just a great way to start the season. It's one of the more notable games to start the season across college basketball. And, yeah, everyone has their own reasons for why this game matters to them. And if it doesn't yet, hopefully it will. And just being in the state, means something. I think the Rutgers-Seton Hall game means something to the state. Obviously, I think playing any school from New Jersey matters. I mean, we've seen what St. Peter's and Fairleigh Dickinson has done in the NCAA tournament the last 2 years. New Jersey basketball matters, and it's important to a lot of people, and it should be. And it's the more that all those programs can play each other, the better. I know people always bring up there should be a tournament. It's never going to happen between the 8 teams. It's just too difficult, I think, logistically, and I don't think that the high major teams would agree to it, to be honest with you, just because also, you have a contracted game between Rutgers and Seton Hall. They're not going to want to play each other twice, I would think. But hey, you know what? There were a lot of people out there that were very vocal that Rutgers and Princeton would never play again or wouldn't play anytime in the near future, and it happened. So never say never. Maybe that could happen. I don't know, but this one's happening. So I voiced my hope for the future, but now it's time to really just ramp in and be excited about the current game. And it's also the start of the season, and it's a transformative time for Rutgers basketball. I think it's kind of a transition in terms of the tenure of Steve Peichel, the style in which this team, I think, is going to start playing this year and beyond, based on the talent level, based on the way college basketball is now, being more up tempo, being more athletic. He's has a more talented roster. I'm really excited to see this team in transition. Their defense obviously is going to be a work in progress. I think JaMychal Davis and Gavin Griffiths are going to have a big impact on this team. They're going to go through ups and downs. I think this team is going to go through ups and downs. But at the same time, I think it's going to be really exciting. And the schedule is more exciting. The non-conference is more exciting. And it starts with Princeton on Monday. And I hope as many people go there as possible. If I know I'll get questions on this. It's airing on Peacock. So you have to have a subscription to Peacock. It's like $6.99 a month. But that's where it'll be. I'll be there live covering the game. So you can, of course, follow me and I'll have all my coverage. But for those that are going, hopefully you are, if you're listening to this. And again, I'm going to have the drawing on Friday. So subscribe to this channel or follow me on Twitter. I'll have other ways to enter as well, like, retweeting the article that this podcast is in, all that stuff. So follow me, all over the place. But being my 200th episode, I wanted to do something that was personal to me. And this Rutgers-Princeton rivalry is certainly that. And I hope it is to a lot of people. And just in terms of, this is also my 300th video on YouTube. So appreciate everyone that already does subscribe or anyone that does listen and watch this on a regular basis. If also, those that listen to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever. We're going into an exciting time, and I've written about some of it this week on thescarletfaithful.com, but just in terms of, Rutgers football having an intriguing November ahead, obviously hosting number one Ohio State on Saturday, but some winnable games in November to make the season even better. You have Rutgers basketball now starting, as well as women's team, which is more of an intriguing team this year. I think wrestling is very deep and going to have a better year than last year. You have, obviously the fall sports and postseason play. Rutgers women's soccer is on the bubble. I think they're going to make the NCAA tournament. Men's soccer needs to make a run. Field hockey is going to start the Big Ten tournament on Thursday. They're still ranked in the top 5 nationally, despite losing their last 2 to top 6-7 teams. Northwestern was obviously number 1. Iowa was number 8. Now that I think they're higher. So there's a lot of stuff to be excited about. A lot of stuff going on, and I'm excited to go through it with every other Rutgers fan there is. And I appreciate anyone that spends time listening to even a second of what I have to say or reading anything I have to say. And I think that's it for now. Thanks so much for listening and watching once again here at The Scarlet Faithful.